Hey, everybody. I wanted to talk a little bit about um, some of the historical background for Livy's writings on the rape of Lucretia and Horatius at the bridge. And then I want to look a little bit at the text themselves and see if I can pull out a few of the important quotes so that we can kind of examine it the way we might in class normally. Um, the Etruscans were the kings, as I mentioned earlier, in Rome until about 509, or until 509 BCE. Interesting factoid. The year that the Etruscans were kicked out of Rome happens to be the exact same year that in Athens, um, Pisistratus and Hippias and Hipparchus, those last tyrants of Athens, were kicked out. So this is kind of the same time that Athens began its time as a quote unquote democracy, is the same year that Rome began its form of democracy, or as we call it, the Republic. There are two major events that you're reading about. One has to do with the actions of the son of the king, a guy by the name of Sextus Tarquinius. And Sextus was accused of raping a young Roman woman, married woman named Lucretia. And the story, as you read it, you will see that Lucretia is not just a young Roman woman, as if that weren't be bad enough, but she seems to embody all of those virtues that the Romans felt were important in a woman at the time. And so the actions of Sextus go even beyond the dismay of the physical act itself. After that happens, Sextus and his entire family are kind of kicked out of Rome, and they quickly go and try to get allies from the other Etruscan city-states, led by this guy Lars Porsena, who is noted to be the most famous and most powerful warlord of the time. They get him to help lead an army against the Romans, so that the Romans don't set the example that, hey, we should be able to kick out kings whenever we want. This is a dangerous precedent they want to be avoided. So Lars Porsena and the rest of the Etruscans march down on Rome. There's only one way into the city over this bridge, and that's where great Horatius comes in. Horatius sees the other men running away before this host of an army coming, and he quickly tries to find a way to slow them down so that the Romans can hack the bridge down behind them, thus keeping out the Etruscans forever. He walks across the bridge. It's a pretty narrow bridge, but not so narrow that he can hold it by himself. Two other very brave men step forward. It is Herminius and I don't even remember the third guy's name. Anyhow, they hold the great army at bay for just long enough for the bridge to be knocked down. Unfortunately, Horatius was not quick enough to get back over the bridge in time, so he says a prayer and jumps into the Tiber River and swims across in all of his armor and makes it to Rome, thus saving the city and the honors that come afterwards. So those are that's the outline of what the actual events are. I want to spend a minute or two just looking at some of the text. You'll see I pulled up the text here. I just highlighted a couple of portions so that you could see the kinds of things that I think Livy is trying to get through. It's about the virtues of Rome in many respects. So when Lucretia's husband and the men start to walk around looking to see who the best woman in the world is, or the best woman in Rome is, this is what stands out to them. You might think back to the story of Candulus and Gyges. Remember, Candulus wanted Gyges to see just how beautiful his wife was? Well, beauty is great, but for the Romans there was something, I think, a little bit more important. So when you see them talking about Lucretia here, it says, there they found Lucretia behaving quite differently from the daughters-in-law of the king, whom they had found with their friends before a grand feast, preparing to have a night of fun. Lucretia, even though it was night, was still working on her spinning, with her servants in the middle of her house. They were all impressed by Lucretia's chaste honor. Notice, she's not out there partying. She's not doing those things. It is that which makes Lucretia stand out. This is what makes her the ideal Roman. Um, and notice again how this is contrasted with Sextus. In the next passage, Sextus shows up at the house, and the first thing it says, he was well received and given the hospitality of the house, right? He is treated the way one is supposed to be treated. And yet what does he do? Beyond the actual action, which we know, the physical action, look at the words that are used to describe this action. He attacked her soul. He triumphed over her virtue. These words are chosen for a reason, right? It was after this was all done and she is crying and upset, the men try to comfort her and say, the soul is the only thing that can do wrong, not the body. And because she had not done anything wrong with her soul, she did nothing wrong, right? She has this pure soul. And yet she does kill herself. And there's this important moment at the end where this guy Brutus pulls the knife out and holds it up and says, by this blood, pointing to the blood of Lucretia, which was so pure before the crime of the prince, I swear before you, O gods, to chase the king with his criminal wife and all their offspring by fire, iron, and all the methods I have at my disposal. And here's the great last line. And never to tolerate kings in Rome evermore, whether of that family or of any other. This is a statement against monarchy in general. This is about the beginnings of the Republic. It's important to note that this was written several hundred years later, right? So the power of the Republic, this is the notion that has now been ingrained in the Romans. And here it is. At the beginning, they tell a story where Brutus grabs this and makes this bold claim about monarchy. It is important to note that Brutus will become one of the first two consuls of Rome. And you'll learn more about the consuls as we go through, but he's basically like one of the first presidents of the new republic. So he is a symbol of this new republic. And then our second reading talks about brave Horatius. And again, beyond the action, and it's a pretty cool story about maintaining the bridge and all of that. Beyond that, though, there's some really interesting points about what Rome is about and what the Republic is supposedly about. It says here, liberty, they declared, had charms enough in itself, and unless kings defended their crowns with as much vigor as the people pursued their liberty, the highest must be reduced to a level with the lowest. All right, this is Lars Porsena and the Tarquins' argument about why they needed to fight. We can't let those poor people, those who are lesser than us, rise up and get power. It is their statement against the common man. And this is set up as kind of a foil, right? The monarchs are all about the power of the family, the institutions of kingly government. And the Romans are about, no, we are great people in this republic. And you see how the republic takes care of itself. The senators, those who are, they refer to here as the fathers, the ones who are caring for the city. When things are going bad, look what they do. They help by cutting taxes and help pay for education. This indulgent care of the fathers accordingly kept the whole state in such concord amid the subsequent severities of the siege and famine that the highest as well as the lowest abhorred the name of king. Right? The Senate took care of people, and people began to realize that kings were bad and that this republic was good. This is the message the Romans want to get across. You can decide whether or not this is a successful way of getting that message across, but this is what they want to say. You see again the bravery involved. Two indeed remained with him. These are the two guys. Arius, Spurius Lartius, I can't believe I forgot his name, and Herminius, eminent from their birth, renowned for their gallant exploits. These are the dauntless three. And finally, we get, I like this passage here where Horatius is actually taunting the others in the other army. He says he now challenged them singly and then reproached them, slaves of haughty tyrants who, regardless of their own freedom, came to oppress the liberty of others. Looking at those people who are just mindlessly listening to kings, and he says, no, this is about liberty and freedom. Think about stories even at the beginnings of America, right? The stories we're told seem to have that same message, right? The tyrant of George and England, and the brave men of the colonies overthrowing the tyrant. I think there's a lot of similarities between these stories, and I think there's good reason for that. We have to kind of look through that and start to say, okay, so what is being valued here? I'm not going to read the end here. It's just a little bit about how he is treated afterwards. I hope this helps you kind of put these readings into context. While we're doing distance learning, I know it can be a little bit difficult because you can't ask one question and get an immediate response. So I'm hoping that this will at least help guide as you read. I don't want this to take the place, obviously, of your own careful reading, but I want this to be something you can utilize, in conjunction with your own careful reading to really get a better understanding of this, which should help ultimately with those reflections you're going to be doing. Please, as always, if you have any questions about this or anything else, shoot us an email. That's what we're here for. Thank you.